January 9th, 2021, meeting of the Town of Walpole Select Board. Being that the time is after 7 p.m., we'll get started with our meeting. We'll begin as we always do with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could please stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I'll announce that all members will be participating remotely during the meeting due to the unprecedented time in the history of the Commonwealth. The governor has authorized remote participation for all the public boards due to the emergency declaration order that was issued on March 12th, 2020, and we will be operating under those orders. Every vote will be taken by roll call vote. So we'll begin tonight under appointments on our agenda with a quick recognition and hello to Evan McGrew and his father Mark. I think that I see them come into the meeting here. Oh, there they are. Hey guys, how's it going? Can you hear us okay?
Good, yeah, we can hear you great, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you for joining us, Evan and Mark. And we wanted to give you some recognition and say thank you, Evan, for your incredible efforts over the past couple of months. Everybody here on the board and anybody who is even close to social media over the last couple of months knows the work and effort that you've put into everything that's gone on here. And it's such a wonderful community story. So we'd like to have you just talk real briefly, Evan, and say a little bit for those folks that may not know, what you've done over the past couple months and why. And then we'll just go around all the select board members here and say a little something. So please go ahead.
Okay, so my friend Grayson was in a recreational accident, and I wanted to raise money for him, so we made Christmas trees out of pallets to raise money for him. We made 500 of them. We raised, what was it?
We ended up raising $24,700 in total donations that we provided to his family, who are dear friends of ours as well. And we gave him, the family, the money just after New Year's. Grayson came home from the hospital the day before Christmas Eve. And, unfortunately, he is paralyzed from the waist down and he can't walk. He's in a wheelchair today. So this was something that, that Evan and I came up with, and he really wanted to move forward. And it was unbelievable, the involvement from the Walpole community. And we met so many wonderful people. We had, a lot of people come in just to help us. They didn't even know the family. It was an unreal experience. And Evan really did a great job kind of facilitating the idea, getting everything together, and really just, at his age, to be able to give back and think of these things, we think it's just wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much, Evan. And it's a great example, really, of community participation and going above and beyond to help people that we know and love. So at this point, I'll just go around each member of the board to say a little something, or if you have any questions. Nancy, could we start with you, please?
Sure. All right. I just wanted to say, Evan, Mark, when I met you before Christmas, you were so small in the very beginning, and I don't know if you can, Evan, appreciate what a big gesture and what a big heart that you have. And in a time that can be so sad for one individual family, for the entire town, to see somebody like you have so much heart and just do something so big, it just brings hope, and hope to more than the family that you helped, but it brings hope, I think, to the whole town. And I personally am so proud of you. You are exactly the kind of kid that every single parent wants as theirs. So, you know, good job, buddy.
Thanks, Nancy. David?
Yes, I thank you for bringing this to the board, and it really just quickly, it just defines what it means to be community. You have shown what a community is, and I appreciate that, and the community does. And thanks.
Thank you.
Mark, please.
Evan, I would just say congratulations. What a good friend you are to think up a good idea to help raise money for your friend and raise the spirits of not only your friend but the whole town. Congratulations. Great job.
And Jim O'Neill?
Yeah, and Evan, thank you for being here tonight and sharing your story. You're a wonderful friend, and what a very difficult time for everybody involved. And your friendship and your willingness to step up the way you have and raise $24,000 is just remarkable. Really, really well done. Thank you, and thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, and thanks. I know Joanne Mulligan had reached out to you as well, and we've become dear friends with her, and we absolutely love her and her husband. And I know she reached out to you about having a tree in the common, and I think you were acceptant of that. We really appreciate that because I think that this is something that's going to continue on. And as you all probably saw, those trees were everywhere, including Town Common. So we're excited that maybe we can get one in there each year. So thank you for your support.
Awesome. Great. So thank you again for joining us tonight. You certainly have the recognition and appreciation of the entire select board and certainly the town. So thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great night. Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Okay, moving on to the next item under appointments is Chad Clark with Roselli Clark and Associates, who performed the Town of Walpole's 2020 fiscal year 2020 audit presentation. And hello there, Chad. Thanks for joining us. Before we turn it over to you, Chad, maybe Jim, you could give us a little introduction here. And I saw Jody on earlier, or Judy on earlier. Is she still there?
Yes, she's. I can see her on here.
Okay.
So
There you are.
there she is.
Too many boxes. I need the picture.
So Chad hasn't come before us in a little while. Usually he comes before us with the year-ending audit, just to kind of highlight some of the positives and a couple of things that they'd like to see adjusted. So I've asked Chad to come in tonight just to update you. We were hoping to do this in December after the OPEB stuff, but it got pushed off. So we're here tonight. So with that, I'll kind of hand it off to Chad to kind of go over the executive summary with you, and then take a couple questions if the board has anything.
Great, thanks. Yeah, please go ahead, Chad.
Hey everyone, how are you doing tonight?
Thanks for being here.
Jump right in here. My understanding is you've all received a copy of the FY20 audit, so I'm just going to take some time and highlight some of the changes for FY20. Overall, the town really didn't do that bad considering everything that was going on, and I know some of the fears that was gripping cities and towns in Massachusetts in FY20 with a lot of unknowns. What I'd say is that the general fund, which is your main operating fund, it went from about 19 million to about 18 million in total. So it was down about $1 million. That's, I believe, somewhat predicated by it was an expectation in the fact that the expenses and the revenue, the expenses you were able to hold tight very well. Everything you can control as far as your departments go. You had a surplus in budget versus actual. So that was a very positive thing. And honestly, the expenses are about the only thing you can control. The revenue, while property taxes and items like that are set, you can't control payments maybe the way you'd want to. On the revenue, you did end up with a few deficits from expectations. Motor vehicle and other excises were down about 30,000, not unanticipated. That was fairly normal. A lot of people froze up as far as like they didn't go out and purchase cars in the last quarter of the year. Penalties and interest on taxes was down. You only recognize that as revenue when you pay. So a lot of more people were delinquent than normal paying taxes. So my expectation is that number will be a little higher in FY21 as things cycle back around and people get caught up paying their taxes. They'll pay the interest and penalties due. And then fines and forfeitures were down about 18,000 from expectation on revenue. Overall, I thought one of the good trends was that you spent about $5 million. Let's see here. Let's flip through some notes here, guys. You spent about 5.4 million of your free cash in FY20. Yet when I look at the free cash number that you brought in at the beginning of 20, it was 5.6 million, and what you got approved at the end of FY20 was 5.8. So you did very well, utilizing the 5 million, but also recovering it through various processes. So I would give you some credit there. Is you really didn't, while you utilized it, you didn't lower your ability to have free cash available going forward. So I think that was a very important result coming out of the year also. On the net position statement, it's the first one of the statements. It would be on page 11 if you're looking. I'm going to just highlight a few things. This is really the GASB balance sheet, so to speak, and it reflects all the long-term liabilities and whatnot that really reflect a long-term positioning versus, say, the balance sheet that's a few pages later that matches more with how Jody keeps the books, how DOR wants the books. So I'm going to gloss over these a little bit. The reason I'll stop is this is where your OPEB and pension liabilities come in, and I know that's always been an area of interest for you all. So you ended the year in the governmental funds with a negative unrestricted net position of $56 million. Now, of that 56 million, there was 46.5 million related to the OPEB liabilities and 39.9 million related to the pension liabilities. So that's 86.4 million that it's causing that deficit. So if you back out those two long-term items that you have multiple decades effectively to pay, you would actually ended up with about a $30 million positive unrestricted. So that's how much those are impacting that statement. Is as far as your personnel costs and benefits, the town's actuarially on the hook for about $86 million. But that is not, that you're paying off pay as you go, where you budget the amount that's due every year, and then you're throwing a little extra into the OPEB also every year. So to kind of get caught up, similar to how you pay you're putting it into the pension and also into the OPEB. So you're slowly getting caught up on that liability. What I would speak to on the liability for OPEB is we had talked about this, myself and the financial staff and personnel, that your actuary that you've been using for years had been looking to retire, and you had to replace your actuary. The previous actuary was willing to give you a discount rate of 7.5%, which is the highest you can really go. And he had justification for backing it up. I don't want anyone to think that it's not, but it's an interpretation that isn't necessarily followed by some of his peers. And we'd known this going into it when his time with the town was going to be done. So it was planned in. The new actuary came in at 6.75% for a discount rate, which is actually pretty good. I've seen it actually even lower in other communities. So you dropped by 0.75%. That resulted in an additional increase to your OPEB liability of about 4.4 million just for that change. The other aspect that changed quite a lot for many towns this year is there had to be an update to the mortality tables. And as part of that update, it tended to increase the liability also. I'm sure the mortality tables were factoring in the adjusted length of life aspects to things. So all in all, the liability at the end of fiscal 19 was 44.5 million. At the end of 20, it was 41.2 million. So an increase of about 6.7 million or so. The good news is that your holdings in your OPEB trust account went up just under $1 million. So your net liability changed just by 5.6 million overall. So there's a lot of offsets kind of going on there, but that's actually a better result than I was expecting when we knew you were going to change actuaries. So while not the best news, I think it could have been worse. So just to kind of jump over a little bit here, a couple of informational items. Of your property taxes in town, about 60% of it is made up of residents, which is consistent, or I should say, total property taxes is about 60% of the town's revenue. Of that number, there was about 84% is made up of residentials. Couple of the reasons those numbers are important is property taxes, while timely payment is a little bit in question during COVID here, you still get 60% of your revenues from what I would call a fixed known source. And of that, you get a large portion in the 80% from residents. So while commercial fluctuations and the unknown relative to business over the next few years does impact Walpole, given the commercial base, it's not, you're still relying quite significantly on the fact of the people who live in town. And hopefully that will help bridge any economic impacts that might be negative, at the moment and going forward until things can get kind of squared away. Anything that you all want me to cover that I haven't?
Sure. No, that's great, Chad. I appreciate that. And Jody, before we go around to the board, do you have anything to add or any comments before we kind of go around here?
It's just that with COVID, I think that we really did do extremely well, especially in our free cash. How it fell out, and hopefully 21 will be a little bit better.
Yeah, in more ways than one.
Right.
Okay, so we'll go around to the board now at this point for any questions or comments. Nancy, if we could start with you, please.
No, I'm good. I think that I'm pretty happy considering, almost a year ago, the doom and gloom that we were all really, really worried about. That first meeting that we had outside the fire station when Jim threw the hammer down and told everybody's budget that they were frozen to stop spending. I think that it looks better than we thought it was going to. So for that, I'm grateful. I think, Jim had mentioned also some interest rates that have come in for us we've benefited for that. So thank goodness. I think having this done over the last, how many years have you been coming in? Like the last 10, 15 years that we go over this, and every single year, you know, you found something that we were kind of, that you gave us a good idea to just readjust that would help us with the way we were saving and the way we were putting things together. You know, our bond rating alone speaks for it. And, you know, I appreciate this, and, you know, thank goodness we've been doing this as long as we have. So, thanks.
Thanks, Nancy. David?
Yes, building on what Mrs. McKenzie said, we over the last 6 years we had like a punch list of things to fix, and we've gotten through those, and with your help, and I appreciate that. And so I'm sure there are a few minor things that still need to be done, but we've gotten through that list. I want to it's another example of the town administrator and the finance people certainly have done a good job again, and I appreciate that. And the other issue is with the OPEB money. It's always a moving target, and it's funny how, like, one year everybody's we reduced it by 4 million. Oh, it's going the other way this year. So it's clear that when we're looking at the number in that long of a distance, it's those small incremental changes or changes in the rules aren't really what we need to be focused on, but we just need to be focused on making as much headway as we can, as early as we can, and not worry about what that ultimate number is. Just let's, if there's money at the end of the year, focus less on spending it and focus more on reducing future responsibilities. And I think, it's clear. I think it was a couple of years ago, even my first year on the board, everybody's all excited that the number went the other way. And it's clear that it's kind of meaningless. We just have to keep focusing on it. And I think it's great now that we have not quite, it's been a part of our budget every year. And in years it's been lower, like last year, but I think that's a key, that we're constantly chipping away at it. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Mark?
Yeah, this is a good time for me to again say that I think that Jim and Jody and Marilyn and all the other people involved with the finances realized early what COVID could mean to us on the downside and reacted quickly. And I really do appreciate that. So many towns didn't react quickly and, waited and delayed, and it didn't make the news any better. So I appreciate that we clamped down on spending. And I really appreciate the way everybody worked together. The employees, the department heads, the schools, the RTMs, finance committee, capital budget, to realize that we were in a unique circumstance. And while we wanted to continue to do some things, we were able to cut things back. And I really appreciate that. For Chad, I know there was a list of GASB items in there that, have been pronounced in the last year or two, and we're sort of studying them. Are there any of those that are actually big that are going to have an impact on us, or all those more technical in nature?
No, there is actually some. That's a very good question. There are actually some that are going to impact things. The one that's really going to impact the finances of the town and honestly the time involved would be the second one, which is listed as number 87 for leases. It's required to be reported at the end of FY22. So what you're really talking about will be the fall of 2022. The change right now, capital leases, which are, I think, more along the lines of, it's effectively debt, a capital lease. A lot of times, most of them have a $1 buyout, and it's, the one we see a lot of is like lease vehicles. It's like a 3-year lease. It's really structured like debt. Those are the ones we have to pick up. I I don't know if at the moment, right at the top of my head, I don't think you have any, or if you do, it's very little. A lot of towns don't. They just go out and buy it with a warrant article, or they take out debt. They don't necessarily go the capital lease route. The change that's coming is your operating leases are going to have to be reported in a similar fashion. That means copier leases. It means if the town's renting any buildings or anything that you think of as rent or a rental agreement, it's now going to have to be put on the town's books as a liability. While copiers, aren't going to be earth-shattering, probably the biggest issue is it's something we audit, but it's going to have to be a list that the town goes through and compiles. So the best example I can give is like 20 years ago or so when you had to do fixed assets for the first time. Every department is going to have to provide a list of what assets they're renting and then also their agreements so that an amortization schedule can be calculated. So I don't think it's not likely to impact things materially on the net position statement, is my guess, because the material is pretty high. But as far as putting the numbers together, it is going to be time consuming. That's the one that's really going to have any meaningful impact to what you all see. We have, the first one on fiduciary activities, that's really more of a geography thing for us about where it goes on the financials. I'm looking through, that's the one, Mark. That's a good question, and I'm glad you brought it up because I do want to give people the heads up because, you're already working on FY, 22, 23 budget planning, so it's really not that far down the road, when you think about it.
Thanks, and I did want to point out that I said the word GASB, but that really stands for the Government Accounting Standards Board, and that's the group that sort of sets the rules for how all financial statements will be for cities and towns and the government and governmental type agencies. So I didn't mean to slip in the acronym, but I wanted everybody to understand that's sort of an overarching board that looks at all governmental type organizations to make sure we all report things by the same way. Appreciate that, Chad. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Mark. And Jim O'Neill, please.
Hey, Chad, thanks for being here tonight, and again for the report you put together. I always find these really comprehensive, and there's a lot of stuff in them. 59 pages. It's a bit of a slog to go through it, but it's actually worth doing, and it reinforces to me that we're doing a really good job of running the town. So kudos to Jim and the finance team for the work that they do every day, and the work that's been done over the last many years to set policies in place that are the things that guide us today on how we make decisions on how we spend the taxpayers' money. I think the discussions that you have in that document around stabilization, around OPEB, around the pension fund, about how we think about the capital budget and how that shows up, of course the GASB stuff that we just talked about, and many more things, the enterprise funds, everything are just well articulated and really talk to the things that how the town operates every day. I also think that the change in that discount rate for the OPEB liability is a very prudent move. Yes, on paper it jacks the number up a little bit, but it is a better way to think about it in my mind. That 7% discount rate at 7.5% was high. This feels like a much better rate, and although it puts the balance up a little bit, to David's point, the real key is that we stay focused on it. But I think it's a better representation of what that liability actually is in truth. And so we do need to maintain our discipline going forward, continue to put money into OPEB, put money against the pension, keep putting money into stabilization, using free cash for capital items as opposed to balancing the operating budget. All of those disciplined things that we do that I think have put us in a good spot. So even in a year where the revenues are down 5%, which is really what they were today, this year with $1 million, the way that we were able to offset that with the quick reaction of Jim and the finance team and the way we just pay close attention to the money, I think really has made a huge difference. And through all of this, we're maintaining the second highest bond rating you can get, which really helps us in the borrowing side. And Jody, I know you guys spent a lot of energy on this last year in a very uncertain bond market where the interest rates and the rates on bonds were all over the place. And in fact, you made a really smart decision with the bands last year, and we're seeing that come through in the 3% rate versus the 2% rate that we can now get on those bands. So all of this comes clear in that report, and as I said, reinforces to me that a lot of the stuff that we're doing here is all the right stuff, and we just need to continue to do it, continue to be disciplined. There are some things we're going to have to address. We've got to continue to address those things as well. But I think all in, given everything that has transpired in the last year, I think a very strong readout. I think we've got still some heavy sledding to go with this next budget and what happens with the revenue from the state. So we don't want to get sanguine with this, but I think in year one of the pandemic, I think we did a pretty good job coming through it. So Chad, thanks for being here with us tonight to take us through this.
Great, thank you, Jim. And yes, thank you again, Chad. I appreciate it. Appreciate the formulation of that report, providing that ahead of time, making yourself available to go through it with us tonight. So thank you. Appreciate your efforts. And Jody as well, thank you for being here and for all the efforts you put into this. So appreciate you being here tonight.
Yeah, no problem. I would want to point out kind of as a future thing before I get off.
Sure.
We were in doing field work right about Maryland's last week. And so, obviously the town is, since we finished field work, made some pretty significant changes in its, financial management structure. It's actually conversations I'd had with Jim and with Jody leading up to it. I want to applaud the town for opening up the option of having a moving finance director's position. I think no matter, people aside, I think that's a very good decision for any community to consider right now. It allows the community to, work towards its strengths, and where it thinks the position can best be served. We've been there quite a while. It's always been under the treasurer's office, and I think what'll be a little interesting maybe for you all is, for the first time ever, Walpole's going to get a finance director that works from an accounting perspective primarily versus, say, a treasurer collector's perspective. So I think maybe in a positive way, bear with that. Listen to maybe some of the changes in the direction, but I know Jody and Lisa both already been in contact with me. I can tell you they're very motivated for the future, and maybe some new things that they can look to tackle with the change. So I just think it's a good thing what you all did, and obviously, as I hope Jody would agree with, we're always there to kind of help answer the questions and stuff, even through the transition period. So we're not just in during the audit and say, hey, see you later, see you next year. So for anyone that is kind of like, okay, effectively you've got two of your main finance people in two new roles at the same time. They're not abandoned to that by any means. They know we're a resource. So just kind of wanted to throw that out there because that was really an FY21 thing, but
Sure.
I think it was worth noting at this point.
Sure. No, absolutely, Chad. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. And all right, very good. Thank you very much, Chad, and thank you again, Jody.
Thank you for having me.
Have a good night, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Right. All right, so we'll move on then under appointments to Brian Jarvis with Compass Project Management to give us a brief update on the middle school project and then we'll discuss, you know, the consolidated option and other related items. Hey, Brian, how are you?
Good. How is everyone? Good to see everyone.
Good, thank you.
And Ben, I just wanted to note that Mark Breen, the chairman of the building committee, is on here too, and so is Chris Gleason.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah, we have Mark tonight, Chris Blesson from Tappe Architects, and Tony Pena also from Compass Project Management. And I believe you guys got a brief update in your packet. Would you like me to share that now, or just talk through it?
Please, yeah, just a brief overview of the whole thing is a good starting point, I think. Brian, thank you.
Okay. Would you like me to share the presentation?
Sure. If you have that ability, I think.
I think so.
Go for it.
Can you all see that?
All right.
Yep.
So this is what you received in your packet. So we'll give you a brief update on the project timeline as a whole, as far as the feasibility and schematic phase goes and the current status. Some of the deliverables that we have been working on that you might be familiar with, and some of the next deliverables that are next in line. A review of how we got to our current status of the preferred option and the shortlisted options that I know we talked about, and finally the preferred solution and what that means moving forward. So project timeline, you might have seen this before. We've been updating this at all of the school building committee meetings. We're currently in the blue square highlighted area, which is the feasibility schematic process. This is in line with a typical project as far as design phase goes, but it also lines up with how the MSBA runs their projects. So a lot of the terminology that you see on here are actually deliverables to the Mass School Building Authority, or the MSBA. We are currently in the PSR stage, which is a preferred schematic report, which is basically the district and the town's decision to move forward with one option, and then submit that to the MSBA. Upon approval, that option would then enter the schematic design phase, a term you might be familiar with, where you start putting together a little more detail and basically develop about roughly 30% of the overall design of a project. It's at that point that project will be estimated, a schedule will be finalized, an agreement will be finalized with the MSBA. They call it the scope and budget agreement. They'll lock in a reimbursement rate for the town, and that is the information that will eventually get presented at town meeting for approval, and if passed, to a town vote. At which point, if there is an affirmative action to move the project forward, we would then enter a traditional design phase for about a year to get it out to bid, so to speak, and be able to start construction towards the end of 2022. A little more detail. Prior deliverable that we had with the MSBA, the first deliverable is called the preliminary design program, and this is where we do a lot of the investigation into the current conditions at the school, subject school, in this case Woods Bird. If you recall, the MSBA did allow for a dual enrollment study to look at just the Bird or possibly combining the schools. All of that information, all the potential options get bundled up, sent it to the MSBA. No real decisions are made at that point. It's just, here's all the information, here are the potential options. That went at the end of November. We received some comments back from the MSBA. We're incorporating those comments into this preferred schematic report. And then we continue to further vet those options. I know that we've had a few meetings recently that got those options down to a short list. We had some additional information about an option up at the Johnson Middle School site. And then the goal of the preferred schematic report is really to narrow that list all the way down to a preferred solution. And the goal for this project at this point is to get that into the MSBA by the end of this month. And as I mentioned, that would then move into a schematic design where we get even more detailed with some of the components that go into a project. The key takeaway of that schematic design is the project budget, the reimbursement agreement, and the schedule from the agreement with the MSBA. I know you've been receiving updates throughout the last few months as far as the work by the school building committee. When we started the project, given the possibility of 2 different enrollments, we had to look at 2 basically courses of options, one for just a single school and one for a combined school. That turned out about 19 different possibilities. The big decision was made by the school department, school committee, to go with a consolidated school. They thought that was the best solution for delivering middle school education for the town of Walpole. That eliminated roughly half of the options, and from there, the school building committee vetted and basically narrowed the list down to 3. I think a lot of you are familiar with the 3 options that remained. We had an add renovation option of the existing Bird Middle School, basically renovating and adding on to that school to make it large enough to house a combined middle school. The MSBA does require that an add renovation option always be carried forward at this stage, just so they have it for comparison's sake, even if the town decides that that is not the preferred option. The other option was a new combined middle school on the Bird site, basically between the existing Bird and Washington Street, and then also a new standalone school up on the uplands of the Johnson site, kind of up in the woods behind the existing Johnson school. At the end of January, after several meetings and a lot of information gathered about the two remaining options, in addition to the ad reno, the building committee voted to move forward with the new school at the Bird site, which is referred to as option B1, which is in the middle there. So now, between that decision at the end of January and the submission at the end of February, we're continuing to further the design and get into a little bit more information related to that. The TAPA and its team has been working closely with the building committee and also with the district to start to talk about the layout of the inside of that building, the adjacencies, the layout of classrooms, size of classrooms, what the floor plans might look like in a little bit more detail. We're also starting to develop in a little bit more detail possible site design. We had a meeting with all the public safety departments, DPW, to get initial feedback. And again, just gathering more information now related to this specific option. We will have an updated conceptual estimate for this option by the end of this month. And all of that information will go into the packet to the MSBA as part of that PSR submission, which basically is telling the MSBA that this is the option that the town and the district has selected. So this is the B1 option. As you can see, a new building footprint in front of the old Bird building, which is represented by this dotted red line. As you can tell, it's a very tight site. If this is going into construction, what you see for circulation is a proposed initial concept of what circulation might look like, with parent drop-offs coming from Washington Street, possibly a bus drop-off loop coming from East Street to help separate that traffic and mitigate some of the increased traffic that might come to the site. Circulation around the building for public safety, and eventually, after the demolish of the existing Bird, creation of parking lots, and outdoor space in front of the building between the new building and the current baseball and soccer fields. And you see on the right basically a summary of what this option entails. We did similar information for all 19 options prior to narrowing it down. This is obviously new construction. We start approximately late fall at the end of 2022. The first day of school right now would be targeted for fall of 2024, roughly 2 years, 18 months of construction to 2 years. So it could be done in the summer of 2024 and open for the fall of 24. All concept option at this point. It would include demolishing the old Bird building and then be able to complete the site, the parking lot, any landscaping that's associated with it by the following spring of 2025. Conceptual cost at this point is $120 million for a total project cost, and roughly $92 million of that is construction cost. So tonight, based on that update, the building committee is meeting at the end of this month when we have all of this information gathered for the PSR submission, and we'll formally vote to make that submission into the MSBA, similar to what we did with the PDP submission. That vote will be certified with a signature from the building committee, the school committee, and from the executive board. Mr. Johnson signed the original deliverable to the MSBA. And so today we just wanted to make the board aware of the current status of the project, what this option means moving forward. Obviously, the existing Bird School will be demolished as part of this project. The existing Johnson School will be vacated. So that'll be something that the town will be dealing with moving forward. But wanted to get the board on up to speed and understand where this project is, and also look for an endorsement of this option to move it forward into the end of the month's submission to the MSBA.
Sure. So thank you, Brian. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you running through and giving that presentation as well for the folks who are watching at home and may not have seen it recently. As Jim Johnson pointed out, Mark Breen is with us as well. Mark is a member of the school committee and also the chair of the school building committee. Mark, is there anything that you'd like to add as the chair of the SBC before we kind of go around to the select board here for comments and questions?
Not a great job. I believe Brian did a great job. I will say that the committee, despite this all being by Zoom, has been working pretty efficiently, the building committee. You know, it's nice to see people, I feel as if, have been able to have their say and have their input, and you know, we've had a healthy back and forth, and it's becoming more and more productive, I think, with each passing meeting. At least that's my optimistic view. So, but in any case, and Brian's doing a great job. So, thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I will add to that. We were the first project. We might have been the first board meeting the MSBA had to do virtually. They really didn't have any understanding of how they were going to move forward, and the concern was that this could possibly derail some of their projects. I will say that the town and the district has done a great job. We really haven't lost any time, and we're on the original schedule.
Yeah, that's a great point, Brian. That's a great point. So, all right, at this point, we'll go around to the select board here for any questions or comments that the members may have. Nancy, if we could start with you, please.
Sure. I just want to say, Brian, it looks great. You know, I think if it's ever been evident of how much we need newer schools, and it's now. My just one concern is that we are kind of moving fast, and I'm afraid for people voting to support it in the end. I'm just afraid that financially they're just not going to be able to. And that would be a real bummer, because this project is so very much needed. You know, the infrastructure of our schools, you know, doesn't even need to be said. If you've actually looked around or gone to the schools, you would know. But I think the plan, you know, you guys have put a lot of time into it. You've researched everything. The fact that Brian has been here through all of our projects now, and, you know, you intimately know all the sites and the history of a lot of them, that is extremely helpful. And I think the best option that we have for a modern, current middle school that will fit is the B1. I mean, if money wasn't an option, I have to say I'm very old school. I would love to keep our 2 middle schools, but unfortunately, you know, that's not an option. So, but thank you very much. Thank you to everybody on the committee. You know, this has been a hard time, and to do something this big, you guys have been doing a great job, and we appreciate it.
Thanks, Nancy. David?
Yeah. Yes, I would agree with the Mr. Green that you know, it has been a good process, and everybody. I am been appointed by the board. Thank you for that appointment to that committee, and you know, and it has been a good process. I did want to just explain to people that the decision to have the combined school is one that was only the decision of the school committee. The school committee made that decision, and partially they got pushed into the combined decision because that's what the state wants. The state didn't want us to have 2 separate. They were unwilling to give us money to renovate 2 middle schools or to build 2 middle schools. They were only willing to give us money if we were to renovate Byrd, and they were not willing to give us money to renovate Johnson, unless we were going to renovate Johnson to be a combined middle school. And so I don't know why the state has pushed, you know, the policy that they prefer these combined. I think they just have to fund less projects, and this way they don't have to fund 2 separate middle schools. They don't have to go through this process twice. They just go through it once with a combined school. I don't know why they push us this way, but it reminds me of when the state was pushing us with incentives and you know, language to do the recycling, and sometimes they're just plain wrong, and I think they're wrong in this case as well, pushing us into a combined middle school. But this is where we're at, because the combined middle school financially makes more sense than doing the 2 middle schools, because the state won't give us money to build a separate Johnson. So that's what the school committee whose decision it was, decided, and that's where we're at with that. You know, I know that one thing that, the location of the school is on the Bird property has recently moved. I don't know if we're still going to be looking at, it moving again. I don't know if that's still going to be an option, but that's just an interesting change that occurred in the last meeting. But there's still a process to go through, and we'll find out and hopefully get a good plan that doesn't. The construction at that close to the current building still concerns me on that Bird site, and we'll see what we can do to alleviate those concerns. But going forward, I think that's going to be ultimately the best option, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, thank you, David. Mark?
Yeah, I also like the B1 site. I think that's a great location for a combined school. I did want to thank the school building committee as well as Compass for all the hard work that you've put in so far, and all the hard work you're going to continue to put in for the next couple of years. I really do look forward to seeing the middle school kids in a new and modern building that will help them with all the ways the kids really learn now, rather than being in two buildings, you know, built back in the 50s or early 60s. I can't remember which. So I think that's great. I've also appreciated all the updates that have been going on the website, so people can follow along, and I've been able to follow along with what's going on, and I encourage people to continue to do that. Go to the website, you can see the latest status reports, and sort of keep an eye on what's happening, or you can follow along in the Zoom meetings. But again, thanks to everybody for all the hard work, and it's greatly appreciated.
Great, thanks, Mark. And Jim O'Neill, please.
Yeah, without being repetitive, I think that you've picked the right site and would support that. It is time to resolve the middle school issue, and this is the most cost-effective way to do it. And all the things that all the other members have said, I won't repeat it. I did have one question, which is, we got on the list for the MSB, I don't know, a year and a half ago or something like that. And this obviously is going to take a vote of the town. And Nancy, I think you're absolutely right when you talk about, you know, getting that vote to be successful is going to be, is not an easy thing. This is a big ticket item. And, you know, is going to take a lot of convincing, I think, of people to support it. My question is, what happens if the day comes and the vote occurs and the town doesn't vote for it with respect to our position on the list, given that it took us so long to get on the list? And what would then happen to us if that vote's not successful?
So typically what happens there is that the MSBA does give you a small amount of time to possibly do a revote. But typically that is some tweak to the existing option. It's not as if you can bring forward a brand new option that's, you know, maybe a different cost altogether. I think it's about 45 days max. If the district can't move forward with that, at that point, basically the MSBA closes the project. And then you'd have to resubmit a statement of interest. And obviously that statement of interest would be maybe even more scrutinized, because maybe that's the same statement of interest in theory that you submitted the last time. And they're going to say, why would you think this would be any different? So basically you have to start the process over.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were going to say. So, and Mark Breen, I think one of the things that the committee probably needs to be thinking about, and certainly the school board needs to be thinking about, is how are we going to educate the public on this project in a way that makes everybody understand, first of all, the need, second, why this is the right solution. I think it's going to take a lot of work, because this is a big ticket item. And so just want to make sure that we start having those conversations and understanding that if this vote fails, we have to restart the process, and it's been a year and a half. I assume that means that it'd be, you know, another period of time to get back on the list, and then a year and a half from there to get to where we are today. So there's big implications to the vote not being successful, and I just want to make sure that we're really thinking hard about what we need to do to educate the townsfolk so that people can see the benefit of doing this, even though it's a big ticket item.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, and I think you make a good point, Jim. And I think one of the ways, certainly, and I know that Mark and everyone at the school committee is working very hard on it. There is currently a video now on the middle school project website. It's a walkthrough of Bird, and I would challenge anybody to watch that video and say that we don't need to build a new middle school in this town. Just point blank. It's a matter of education and getting the word out there. So certainly that's an aspect that's out there already, and I would encourage people to spread the word and have as many people as possible watch that video and get involved and get informed. Yeah, Mark Breen, please.
I would just add, from a personal standpoint, I work with several people that live in Walpole with young children, and they seem fully aware when I see them in passing at work. You know, this is the topic of conversation, which can only be a good thing, and hopefully they're representative of the community.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. All right, so we did have a motion here for a vote to endorse, and there was just one question, Brian, as to authorization of a signature for any forms, and whether that would be the chair of the select board or if it would be the town administrator.
I think you can determine that. Jim signed the certification for the prior submittal. If you authorize Jim to sign, he could sign it.
That's good. That's what I was looking for, Brian. If I'm okay to do it, I'm totally comfortable. I just wanted to make sure we meet all the MSBA requirements. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. Definitely want to check all the boxes.
Yeah, they use the CEO of a kind of almost as a general term, because the CEO of each town might have a different title.
Okay. All right.
So Brian, before I make the motion, are they going to put hammocks in the classrooms, because that's what the kids are going to be used to when they go back to school? Right. I'll make a motion to endorse the B1 option for the middle school project and authorize either the chair of the board of the select board or the town administrator to sign any and all documents related to.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Being that there is no further discussion, we'll proceed with a roll call vote. Nancy?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ben? Aye. Motion passes 5-0-0. Thank you, Brian and Tony, Chris, and Mark for being with us tonight. Really appreciate all the input, and best of luck going forward, and I'm sure we'll see you again over the next year or so.
Absolutely, great. Thank you.
All right. Have a good night, guys.
Yeah,
thanks.
Take care.
Okay, moving on to the next item here under appointments. We have Town Clerk Liz Gaffey with our annual vote on the apportionment of the RTMs. And I think I saw Liz on there. All right, Liz, been hanging with us here through the audit and everything. Thank you, Liz. So the annual apportionment of RTMs. So Liz, please.
Okay. So as per the charter, I'm supposed to by February 15th let you guys know how we're going to divide out the RTMs for the coming year. And so I've been looking at it since January, and the numbers haven't changed too much since then to today's date. So what that brings to me is we've lost residents in 7 of the 8 precincts, with only precinct 2 picking up any additional residents. So that changes the way that doing that calculation per the charter, that I'm going to have to add a RTM to precinct 2 and take one away from precinct 4. And how did we lose people? Well, we get through the census and then confirmation mailings, you have to let us know if you're still here in town. Should you not answer it, just like the census tells you, you could be removed from the voter rolls. So after missing 2 federal elections, I then have to take a look at it. This is the first time for me to have that. It usually takes 4 years, and that's where we're at. So we ended up cleaning the census up. So it brought us to that new number, which is lower. I believe that precinct 2 ended up picking up people, not losing as much as everybody else, but picking up, because as much as people came off, Cricket Lane came online. And I believe, Laura, is Pennington 3 or 2? And Pennington Crossing is out there too. So depending on how the other 2 things come online, for precinct 6 will be West Street, those new apartments. So that might change the look of the RTMs next year as well. So we'll have to see how they go. So that was my recommendation, is what I've given you there.
Okay. Okay, and is there any discussion or questions from the board? Show of hands if you have any. Nancy?
No, I was just gonna say we've kind of been seeing this coming along. It's not like sneaking up on us. So that being said, I will make a motion that the present apportionment change in precinct 2 and 4 as recommended by the town clerk for favorable action.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Being that there is no further discussion, we'll proceed with a roll call vote. Nancy?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jim? Aye. And Ben, aye. Motion passes 5-0-0. Thank you, Liz. Is there anything else, or is that it?
Nope, that was it for this evening.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
All right,
Thanks,
thank
Liz.
you.
All right, have a good evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, so let's see. So under new business, we have a vote request for Liz McCaffey to use Adams Farm for the given dates for the Friend of Adams Farm seed swap. Oh, you're on mute, Nancy.
How's that? I will make a motion to approve the request of Liz McAfee to use the Adams Farm from March 11th to March 16th, 2021 for the Friends of Adams Farm seed swap. And to comply with all COVID-19 guidelines.
I think Mark seconded, but he was on mute.
Okay, we have a motion and a
Sorry
second.
about that. I'll officially second it.
Thank you.
I thought it was me. I was like, could nobody hear me?
Everybody went on mute all of a sudden. Everyone was being very polite. I do appreciate that very much, but we have a motion and we have a second. Being that there is no further discussion, we'll proceed with the roll call vote. Nancy?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
And Ben? Aye. The motion passes 5-0-0. The consent agenda, Nancy?
I will make a motion to accept with gratitude the following donations from Beth and Paul Miga to the fire department gift account, and then many other multiple donations to the Recreation Smiling Eyes Financial Assistance Program.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Nancy. We have a motion and a second. We'll proceed with the roll call vote. Nancy?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ben, aye. The motion passes 5-0-0.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from January 19th and 26th, 2021 as presented in our packet.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Being that there's no further discussion, we'll proceed with the roll call vote. Nancy?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
And Ben, aye. The motion passes 5-0-0. So we'll move on, I guess, Jim Johnson will move to the town administrator's update.
Sure, and I just, excuse me, texted with Lauren She said she's wrapping up in 5 minutes, so we can get to that the last minute item. So just to run through the TA update, COVID. At this time, we have 1,506 confirmed positive cases in Walpole. 1,414 have completed monitoring. That leaves us with 92 active cases. Vaccine update: the COA vaccine clinic started today. It went off without a hitch. 110 people were vaccinated today. Carrie and Melissa and Trish and Rika doing a great job. Debbie over there too. I know Patrick was stationed over there for part of the day, and it's just great to see everybody pitching in and helping out. So that's a Thursday. They're going to do, I believe, about 100, 110 more over there. And then they have some first responders and school nurses and the CERT team getting done next week too. So that'll be their second round of doses. FinCom started meeting this week. They reviewed the general government section of the budget, culture, recreation, debt, and health and human services last night. Thursday night, they're set to go over the DPW budgets. Veterans officer update. We continue to search for a new agent. We've had a couple of interviews, but nothing's really panned out so far. I've talked to a couple of the neighboring towns, and to basically see if they had any ideas as to where we could advertise. They asked if we were interested in forming another region with not just ourselves in Medfield, but joining one of them. So I told them, yeah, anything's on the table. Let me see what the proposals are. But in the meantime, we're going to continue to try to recruit a qualified person to step in if we find that person. Patrick and I have an interview later on this week. So much more to come on this. In Norwood Hospital, Chief Bailey was in 2 weeks ago, briefly touched upon Norwood Hospital, and he and I circled back last week. We're getting very little information out of Norwood Hospital. The chief's reached out to his people, and no one's really responded. I can tell you that Norwood went ahead and formed a medical services overlay district. One of the key elements there is to allow them to go up to a height of 80 feet in the primary hospital of the building. So that was needed in order for them to move on with their decision-making process. Just earlier today, myself, the Foxborough town manager, and the Norwood general manager were texting back and forth, and we're going to invite the CEO of the hospital into the next Norfolk County Town Managers Association meeting, and hopefully put them on the spot and ask them if there's anything us as managers can do to advocate to make some progress on the hospital. My biggest concern, and I think the chiefs and the managers in the area are concerned with that hospital just packing up shop and not opening up again, and we really don't want to have that happen. Obviously, the commute to Brockton, where we're taking some people, and up to Needham, is just a wear and tear on not only our ambulance services but everybody in the area, and everybody's feeling it. So we're not alone, and we're trying to partner up with the area towns to put some pressure on and to see if there's any help we can give them from the state level. So more to come on that. I just wanted to let the board know I did follow up. And with that, I think, did I see Lauren pop on? No, I didn't.
Lauren's here.
Oh, she is. Hi, Lauren. So that's it for me.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jim. Before we move on here, any comments or questions from the board members for Jim Johnson on his update items?
I did have one quick comment.
Please, David.
On the second shots that we're giving our first responders, I read a little thing today, and I thought it was important, is that there ought to be some attention paid to how many people on each shift that you give the second shot, because many people are ending up with needing a day off after the second shot. And so if they could just have the police chiefs and the fire chiefs take a look at that and make sure they're not like giving 5 guys on a shift the shot and having 3 of them having to call out.
Sure, good call. I know in the first round they did stagger them. I think they were doing about 10 police officers and 10 firefighters a day. And I know Chief Carmichael actually had a reaction to the first round, so they were very much mindful of it. But good call about making sure they're not on duty that day. So thank you.
And thank you, David. And Jim O'Neill?
Yeah, just quickly, Jim, on that incident that we had up on Common Street with the truck accident that took down the poles, is there follow-up that we need to be doing with Eversource on that?
I haven't heard from them, but let me check with Jared Blandino, who is actually my point of contact for Eversource. He's also a Walpole resident, so I'll follow up with him.
Yeah, the reason I ask is that it just seemed kind of odd that, 5 poles came down through that accident. Now, maybe that's just what happens, but it makes me wonder, what the status of poles generally in Walpole are. I know we've had discussion about the double poles over time, but, a couple of those poles look like they were in pretty tough shape. One was curved like a hockey stick, and I just have to wonder whether what Eversource would say about their inspection process and what their view of those poles actually is, and given the implications for the dozen or so neighbors that not only lost power but lost services and have to have their houses rewired and things like that. It's just it's a tough situation, and I just think we ought to dig into it a little bit.
I will do that.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, so moving on here, and I want to just preface the next discussion that's going to be before the board here. I know we have Lauren Goldberg with us as well to be part of this discussion. There was an item that was added to the agenda this afternoon, as that's the time that it came before the board, and we were made aware of it. Maybe Jim Johnson, you could give us a quick intro here before we start the discussion and hear from Lauren.
Sure. So this is something that, so I'll give you an overview. ZBA member Suzanne Murphy reached out to myself and Lauren about a week or so ago and said, listen, this intersection discussion has come up. The board's set to discuss it actually tomorrow because they're set to discuss the Summer Street 40B project. My family owns some property near the intersection. I'm concerned that it's now within the 300-foot radius. What can I do? It's one of those, it's a little bit of a gray area, and I know Lauren did a lot of research on it. After her due diligence and working with Suzanne, she suggested that she come before your board, and that's the reason it was more or less a last-minute ad. And Suzanne did file the following request, and I'll read it to the board into the record. I sent something along. So, my duties require me to participate in a particular manner. I may not participate because of financial interest that I'm disclosing here. I request a determination from my appointing authority, you, the select board, about how I should proceed with this matter. Particular matter. The Zoning Board of Appeals is considering an application for a comprehensive permit for Omni Development. There's a discussion about the possibility of a project mitigation involving a creation of a set of lights at an intersection not on the proposed site. This matter has not been approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals, nor was there significant advance notice of this possibly coming up. The intersection itself is not subject to the comprehensive permit application. Your required participation in this matter. As a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals, I will be participating in deliberations concerning the mitigation for the project. Financial interest in this matter. Please explain the financial interest and include the dollar amount if you know of it. My family and I own property that was left to us in a trust by my father. There are 4 trustees, which I am one. I am not the executor. It is unclear whether the intersection improvement will be pursued as part of the proposed comprehensive permit and or whether it would have any financial impact on my trust. Nevertheless, I felt it important to disclose the interest to the select board and the request of approval for an exemption of any financial interest in this matter, regardless of whether such interest is remote and speculative, and regardless of whether such interest would be positive and negative. I am a longtime resident of the town of Walpole, and my family owns several parcels in a trust. In addition to that, the issue is off-site intersection is under discussion before the ZBA. I request the board's permission to participate in this matter, whereas it is important that all members of the board be available to be part of this important decision. On the vote of this matter. For that reason, please be informed that I intend to make any decisions on the comprehensive permit application in this case, including the potential mitigation discussed above, in the best interest of the town and without any reference to or concern about the personal interest of the trust my family and I might have as a result of. Signed, Suzanne Murphy. And I did talk to Suzanne just about 5:30, and she said, I want to do the right thing here. So Lauren and I are here before you to talk about this, just because they're set to discuss it tomorrow night. So That's it. Lauren,
Okay, no, and so thank you, Jim, and I appreciate Suzanne bringing this up, obviously, and it's timely given that they're going to be discussing it in the coming days. And certainly in the case of these types of considerations, it's always best to be conservative and bring it up for discussion and be as transparent as possible. So, Lauren, you had provided then, I don't know if I should call it an opinion, but some clarifications on Suzanne's letter and your feelings in that regard. If you could just give us a brief overview of that, appreciate it.
I have to do that once a meeting.
Yeah, sure.
Chair, thank you, and hello to the board. I had sent over some information about what Chapter 268A, Section 19B1 exemption is. It's a lot of letters, but we're not going to really talk so much about that. Essentially, what it prohibits is any person from participating in a matter in which they or their family their immediate family have a financial interest. For elected officials, that completely bars participation. For appointed officials, the board has the ability to grant the exemption upon request, provided that the board is satisfied that the person in that position will be making decisions in the best interest of the town rather than in their own interests. My understanding from talking to Ms. Murray is that she has that the trust owns property in several locations, which suggests she's not entirely focused on this one area and what it might do to the value of that property, and that the trust isn't. And an argument exists because it's not even really part of the actual discussion right now. It was, I guess, thrown out there that there is no conflict. But to be on the safe side, my recommendation was that she come before you and ask for this exemption. I do think it protects her, and I also think it protects the decision making of the ZBA, and I know how hard the ZBA has been working on this, and so it seemed to make sense to me to come before you and make that request.
So thank you very much, Lauren. So at this point, we'll go around to the board for questions and comments. Nancy, if we could start with you, please.
Yes, so Lauren also, as a member of the zoning board, and she's doing the comprehensive permit, even if they are negotiating the off-site recommendations, any of the off-site recommendations that fall within the purview of the road commissioners are our ultimate decisions anyway. Is that correct?
Yes, and that's a very good point. Absolutely. I think ultimately the bottom line with any kind of request under 268A section 19B1 is whether you think that interest is so significant that the person can't act in the best interest of the town, or whether you think that it's appropriate to rely on their service to the town rather than on any potential financial interest. And so that kind of underscores what your comment is, in that there's involvement by the board regardless.
Okay, so that's my number one. And then my number two is not related to Suzanne, that by doing this for Suzanne, this does not set or leave a precedent for us for doing it for any other member at any other time, correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So what it does is it says in this very particular situation with the specific information that's been provided, the board, assuming that you said yes, just for purposes of this explanation, the board has determined that the facts that were disclosed and the nature of the interest are not so substantial as to detract from the service that she might be able to provide for the town. It's a high standard, it's completely in the board's discretion. There is nothing in state law that says just because you allow one person to do this, you have to allow another person to. But I will just remind you that you don't want to make decisions based on improper, and I know you're not going to, but on improper things. So it couldn't be, well, we like this person and we don't like that person as part of the discussion. That wouldn't be a basis for deciding about the likelihood of service to the town, for example. Consistent considerations, is it appropriate under the circumstances? And in this case, we have a very significant project. We have, a board that I believe is down one member already. So it matters that everyone's at the table. And again, I think it's very specific to the particular situation at issue. And, you might feel differently if what you said is, just for example, if my property is right next to the Omni development site and it's an abutting site and it's going to affect the value of my property, but please still let me participate. In that situation, you might say, gosh, we just don't feel comfortable. So those are the types of things you would think about if another request like this came in.
Okay. So with that being said, and just also in the fact that we are the board that are the road commissioners, and we are the ones charged with actually making those final decisions, even though they would come out as recommendations. And then having seen many, 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 many years of her voting commitment to the town, I am 100% for granting this exemption.
Thank you, Nancy. David.
What's the address of the property in question?
I don't have that off the top of my head. Let me see if I can get it for you.
Well, that's the most important thing. It doesn't matter if this is a nice person or a person that has done well in the town in the past. The state law says that the determination that we're supposed to be making is whether or not that whether the financial interest is not so substantial as to be deemed likely to affect the integrity of the services which the municipality would expect from the official. So, I mean, we really need to know what the exact property address is. The other thing is, I think stating that this doesn't change, the fact that work is going to be done on this intersection doesn't change the 300-foot buffer zone or the locus or the requirements of the zoning board to give notice to those people within 300 feet. It doesn't change. Those people within 300 feet have a particular status different from the rest of the general public. This does that. She's not within that 300-foot locus, and so she's. If she was, she would not have. She should not have sat. She would not have been able to sit there at all, regardless of. I don't think we could have exempted her unless it was by necessity, and so I don't. That's not an issue. That it didn't change the 300-foot focus. Depending on which property is there, I don't think the designs of the intersection that I can see it be anticipated change the value of the properties very much, except for perhaps if the green gets extended so that there's basically the green becomes the particular property's front lawn, and I think that might have some effect. So I think it's important to know which particular property in that area. Is it just someone 300 feet from that intersection? I'm not concerned. But if it's if it's the direct abutter that might get more green space in the front of their yard, that might be a different story.
So, David, I got an answer for you already.
Okay.
It's 1885 Washington Street. She said it's the old White Tavern across from Jack Wiley, where the school is. So it's if you know where that daycare / the White Church is, she said it's across the street there. So it is on the common.
It's however not the one that would be, at least in the recent diagrams, that would be getting a big.
That's correct, David. That's correct, David. It's the other side of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So while a change in the location of that roadway may have some effect, I don't see it as being so substantial of a financial interest. that, although I do think the road is too close to that house to begin with, so it's good that it will be further away from that house, because it is an important house historically, so, from that perspective. But I don't think that the financial is so substantial as to deemed likely to affect the integrity of her vote. And that's the criteria that we should be looking at. No other criteria. Whether we know her, whether we know she'll be fair dealing, none of that is what the law says. The law says the determination we're to be making as to whether or not it's so substantial that it would be likely to affect her vote. And again, she's not within 300 feet. That it doesn't change that locus. This is an off-site provision. It's got nothing to do with the 300-foot radius. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, David. Mark.
Yeah, I would say I appreciate Suzanne for bringing up the exemption request, and I'm very comfortable with that.
Thank you, Mark. Jim O'Neill.
Yeah, likewise, appreciate the transparency. It's the right thing to do, and I don't see how the financial interest is so substantial that it would become a problem in this case. So I'm good with it. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. I have nothing to add to what the board members put forward tonight. I'm in agreement generally with everything that's been said. And so that being said, there's a motion to accept that.
I hereby move to grant an exemption to Ms. Suzanne Murphy, a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals, from the prohibitions of General Law C-268A, Section 19, and that she has described a potential financial interest in the written document submitted to us this evening with respect to potential off-site mitigation with regard to the Omni Development Comprehensive Permit matter, and further, that such potential financial interest is so substantial as to be deemed likely to affect the integrity of the services that the town may expect from Ms. Murphy as a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals, and further, that Ms. Murphy be notified of the board's decision in writing as soon as possible, and that a copy of such decision will be filed with the town clerk and a copy forward to the Zoning Board of Appeals chair for the board's records.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second. Being that there is no further discussion, we'll proceed with the roll call vote. Nancy.
Aye.
David.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
Jim.
Aye.
Ben. Aye. The motion passes 5-0-0. And I would just add a thank you as well to Suzanne for bringing this forward. I think it was the right thing to do, and I appreciate it, Lauren. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Lauren. Did I sound like I wrote that myself?
You definitely sounded like you wrote it.
Just off the top of your head, really.
Thanks, everyone. Good to see you.
Thanks for coming on, Lauren.
Thanks, Lauren.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so given that there is no further business or comments, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Being that there is no further discussion, we'll proceed with the roll call vote. Nancy.
Aye.
David.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
Jim.
Aye.
And Ben. Aye. The motion passes 5-0-0. Meeting is now adjourned. Thank you, everybody, and have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye now.